The first fight we can talk about, I would say, is RDA versus Colby Covington. Scheduled, now this is the real controversy. Scheduled for the interim title in welterweight.
Yeah.
At UFC 224, the co-main event, which is in Brazil, and that's happening in May. So Rafael dos Anjos and Colby Covington are fighting for the interim welterweight title. What are your immediate thoughts?
I don't know. Oh, so about the controversy or about the fight?
The fight and the controversy. Just your thoughts in general, like your first reaction to hearing that. What was the first thing that came to your mind when you heard that?
So I don't know, because RDA, like I really have watched, the one that I saw most recently of him, because I was going back through all the Khabib fights on Fight Pass. Khabib beat him convincingly, you know, and it was again a classic Khabib ground assault. Mm-hmm. And then when I was going back through watching Colby Covington's fights, he's a solid ground technician as well. Yeah. And if there's a hole in RDA's game, Rafael dos Anjos' game, I think it's on the ground.
Well, I don't necessarily know that, because that was a few years ago, right? And Khabib is just like a different animal.
Khabib, yeah.
Khabib is Khabib. Colby Covington's a great wrestler, and it's going to be interesting too, because that was at 155.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So is he more powerful now at a heavier?
Dos Anjos?
Yeah.
I mean, he looks good at welterweight so far.
Because that's what he just beat
Robbie Lawler.
Robbie Lawler, right? Okay.
I mean, the guys he's fought against, he hasn't necessarily looked really small against,
right?
But he hasn't looked like dominating in size.
Yeah.
But Colby Covington, while he's a decent size welterweight, from my belief and understanding, I'm not sure if he's going to have a massive size advantage over RDA. And RDA does have good takedown defense. He does. It was just Khabib. And that was also before RDA kind of came into his own.
Yeah.
Because after that Khabib fight, when he lost to him, I think he went on a win streak and beat Anthony Pettis. He knocked out Ben Henderson. He had some solid wins after that and really started coming into his own, to where if they fought again, I'd be very interested in that fight, because RDA, that shows you how strong the lightweight division is, because RDA is fighting for an interim title at welterweight. Like, RDA lost a couple fights at lightweight against Eddie Alvarez and Tony Ferguson. He dropped down to we moved up to welterweight, and now he's on a tear.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting fight. And what's really interesting, so the two things that jump to me immediately: for one, it's another damn interim title.
Right.
And we can talk about that in just a second. But two, this is happening in Brazil. Brazil is where Colby Covington called in his last fight a dump, and when he beat Demian Maia, and that whole just about riot, they were throwing cans at him and everything. I'm just curious to see the walkouts. Does Colby Covington need extra security in Brazil? Like, this man's about to get mobbed just trying to walk out to the octagon. But I'm excited about the fight.
Where's RDA from?
Brazil.
Oh, he is Brazilian.
It's in Brazil, and RDA is Brazilian.
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah, it's just not. It's not.
Yeah, and I think Colby. Just from my vague understanding of both fighters, I give the advantage to RDA. One, obviously, because of home field advantage, but I think the striking of RDA is at such a high level. Like,
here's the thing.
Such a scary guy.
Here's the thing. Unless Colby can really, really give RDA trouble with his wrestling and his pressure, because Colby's not going to get tired. He's got excellent cardio. RDA has excellent cardio as well. And he went a full 5 rounds with Robbie Lawler, unloaded I think it was a 40 punch combination up against the cage against Robbie.
Damn.
And Brian Stan was talking about RDA possibly, gassing and, all this, is up in his, all this built up energy, and, everything is just thrown out there in the first and second round that he thought, okay, RDA is probably going to start slowing down. He didn't at all. He kept up the same pace the whole fight, even after that ridiculous combination. And I don't think he's going to gas. The big question to me is, can he handle Colby Covington's constant pressure?
Right. And
can he also handle the wrestling of Covington? If he can do that, Colby was getting boxed up by Demian Maia before Demian gassed. So I think this is RDA's fight if he can hold off the wrestling.
Yeah.
But the interim title, why? Why do we need another interim title? Tell me.
Well, no, you go, because you're a little more upset about these interim titles than I am.
Really?
In some instances, I think they're necessary.
Yeah, they are in some instances. Like the Tony Ferguson Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. That is worthy. I mean, that's for the actual lightweight belt. Yeah. Now Tony's just the interim champion. Yeah. I mean, do I think Tony versus Kevin Lee should have been for an interim championship? I don't think Kevin Lee was necessarily ready for a title shot yet. That's just my opinion because he's still young. He only had one elite win and one like pretty good win. Tony Ferguson was on this giant streak. Yeah. So, I mean, we all really knew the fight to make was Khabib versus Tony for the interim title. Of course, you know, they dropped out initially at UFC 209. Now they're getting put together now. But in some cases, it is necessary. The interim title is necessary. But like in this case, Tyron Woodley just fought in July, for one. Yeah. And that seems like a long time ago thinking about it right now. But he tore his labrum in that fight against Demian Maia. Was going to come back for a fight in December. Was talking about possibly fighting Nate Diaz because he wanted to hold off the surgery and he could fight. He said he wanted to fight Diaz first. That didn't happen, so that's why he delayed his surgery till December, January timeframe. He gets the surgery. He's not going to be coming back to like July, but we know he's coming back in July. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, why are you doing an interim title fight in May? Like, yeah, and he hasn't even been. By the time that fight happens, it'll be 10 months since Tyron Woodley's last fight. That's not a long time ago for a chance. Like Anderson used to defend every like 6 months or so. Mm-hmm. And you have this instance in this case where he has an injury, right? And like, okay, so there's a reason to hold off giving an interim title because he's only injured for this shorter period of time. We have an understanding of the time frame where he's coming back. An interim title should be handed out, in my opinion, only when the champion is not going to be able to defend for an unforeseeable amount of time. Yeah. Like we don't know.
The division is in chaos basically because we don't know what the champion's going to do.
Exactly.
But we have a clear understanding of what Tyron Woodley is planning on doing and what he probably will do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the only time I think that should be happening is when like indefinitely we don't know when he's coming back.
Yeah.
Him or her, whatever championship, you know, that's the only time I think that an interim title should be handed out, but now
because then it's just taking away from what being the champion really means.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. And we're becoming desensitized to the idea of these interim titles because they're being thrown out so often. Yeah. And it's like we just had an interim title in the welterweight division. I mean, the middleweight division with Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold. Now, Yoel didn't win the interim title because he missed weight, but now he's getting his title shot. Yeah. Who else was an interim? Robert Whittaker, when he beat Yoel Romero the first time, that was for an interim title because Michael Bisping was the champion. You had of course, the scheduled lightweight interim title between Ferguson and Kevin Lee. That was for an interim title. I mean, there are just like a plethora of these interim titles, and it desensitizes me to the value of it. Like I don't see any value in those titles because they're just handed out like candy. Like, why can't you just have promote it as a number one contender fight? Yeah. This person is going to get the champion next. Promote it as that, rather throwing an interim title on it as a marketing tool to try to sell your fight. Because I hate to break it to WME, but if people didn't already know who Rafael dos Anjos and Colby Covington were, throwing an interim title on that is not going to make somebody who didn't know them care about that in order to watch. Like, an interim title. I got to watch this now. It's not going to create any more mass appeal than you already have. Right. Why don't you just take time into promoting the fight, promoting the fighters, and talking about how the winner is going to get the champion, Tyron Woodley, and the significance of this fight and promote that, maybe you'd have something. But if you just throw an interim title on it, you're not, and don't do any additional promoting of them, at least any more than you would have done if you didn't do an interim title, why even have this? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to help any more than, so I'm just frustrated by it. And it's also an insult.
And it's confusing to, somebody who doesn't know the sport so well. You're like, what? So who's the champion then? Like, what? It's hard even understanding the difference in the weight classes, for one. So you're like trying to figure out the difference of 12 different champions or however many weight classes there are. For one, that's just the champions. Then you have to do the math behind who's the interim champion and why are they the interim champion and what does that mean? What was wrong with the champion that he could? It's too convoluted. Right. Just have a fucking champion and have a number one contender. That to somebody who doesn't know the sport that well, you can talk that out in 2 or 3 sentences. Precisely. Yeah, it's
But that's the thing too. It's way too much to keep track of with all these champions. And you bring up a good point. You being claiming the tagline, the casual fan, you represent that very well of just starting to get into the sport, and you're having this trouble of realizing how many champions there are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they used to just have 5 divisions from lightweight to heavyweight. That was it. Then they added the 2 weight classes from the WEC, bantamweight and featherweight. So you had Aldo and Dominic Cruz come in as champions. Then they added flyweight. So Demetrius Johnson has been the flyweight champion. So that's 8 divisions right there. Okay. So that's all the men's. Then you've got 4 women's divisions. Yeah. So that's 11 divisions right there. So you've got 11 different champions. Nobody even knows who the hell the champion is at flyweight and women's division. Like, I mean, I know who she is. That's I can't remember her name. It's like Nico Montana or something like that. I could be saying that way wrong. Like, please forgive me if that's the case. But that's the thing. Like, I've been following the sport. I don't even know who the person is. Like, I've seen her name. Yeah. I've seen highlights of her, but I've never actually seen a fight of hers. Like, and she's a champion she's a UFC champion. Valentina Shevchenko is about to make that.
Yeah, she's scary. She's
about to make that belt hers. But there's so much to keep track of, and then you throw on these interim titles on top of it. Okay, we already have 11 champions. Let's just add 3 or 4 more. So now we've got 15 champions in the UFC. We have no idea who's the real belt holder, who's not. Is Conor McGregor still the champion? Yeah, he's about to get stripped, I think, in a couple weeks. It's just it's so for somebody like you who's coming into the sport, or even somebody like me who doesn't do this full time and keep track of everything, to the plain from the person who sees it from afar, tries to keep up with it here and there, they're going to be like, screw this. This is too much to even I don't even know who the hell the champion is of the bantamweight. I don't even know there is a women's flyweight division. You know what I mean? There's just so much to take in. But the last thing I want to say about the interim titles too is it is an insult to the champion too, because you take away the value of his belt if you're given another interim title just like that. Yeah. So, and especially with somebody like Tyron Woodley. And not only, I mean, Woodley's taken a little bit of time off here, but you have to look back too. The guy was the most active champion, I believe, in the UFC. He was actually, for that year time frame from when he won the belt until his last defense, he was the most active champion in welterweight history ever. From the, I think it was from the time where he won the belt until his last defense. The most active champion ever. And he won all of those. He had the one draw against Stephen Thompson, but he won the rematch, and then he beat Demian Maia. And yes, while those fights weren't necessarily too exciting, Tyron Woodley is an exciting fighter, believe it or not. Oh, yeah. If you go back at his catalog, I love watching his fights. Yeah, the guy is super fun to watch. In his last couple fights, he tough cookies to deal with too. Like, Demian Maia isn't somebody you can just throw the world at and expect a knockout in the first round and expect not to get taken down. And if you get on the ground and on your back against Demian Maia, you're as good as dead. Yeah. He's not going to be overzealous against him. He's going to be calculated. And he did tear his labrum in that fight. But what I'm getting at is he was the most active champion during that time period. He has a little layoff, has an injury, and it's understandable, and we understand how we have a foreseeable future for Tyron Woodley. Like, we know when he's coming back to fight. And you just throw out an interim title, that decreases the value of his belt at the end of the day. Yep. And it's disrespect too, because okay, we appreciate all this activity you've given us. Now we're just going to give somebody else in the division a championship because you haven't defended for a bit because you're going through an injury. It's just, I totally rant over.